Okay, this video is about how to set up dates from girls that you meet from cold approach via text. So normally I would prefer guys actually called to arrange dates, and I'll do another video on how to do that for maximum effectiveness. But when you're new and you're not really used to getting phone numbers or talking on the phone, yes, the text message will get you plenty of dates, plenty of lays. It's just a little bit less efficient that I find. Okay, so how do you go about doing that? You grab a girl's phone number and you want to set up a date. So the first thing that you have to do is send her an icebreaker text. This is just a text so she has your phone number. I usually send them, hey, this is, or whatever her name was. Hey, Jessica, this is Tom from the gym. Tom from the SkyTrain, Tom from the bus stop, whatever, wherever you met her. Save my number with a smiley face. This is just a command to get them to save your number. And it does help because that way there's never wondering who's calling or who this person is. Okay? Usually they'll reply with yes sir or ooh, yeah, no problem, saved. Whatever. They'll just confirm that they saved your number. At this point I just leave it. I usually leave it for the next day, and then I text them, hey, whatever her name is, whatever, Sandra, whatever, what's up? And it's super easy for them to reply back. They'll say hey, nothing much, I'm just hanging out, just got off work, or I'm just on my way to school, whatever. At that point, I just pitch straight into the date. At this point, a lot of guys will recommend asking for a girl's schedule in order to schedule the date. But I mean, I've done this before many of times, and I've run into so many obstacles and headaches doing it that way. Here's what happens. When you ask a girl her schedule, she'll be like, I don't know. She can't think that far ahead because there's too many options of dates or times that she could eventually work. And it just gives her too many options. That's what happens when I was scheduling, meetups with clients, personal training clients that were women. Whenever I asked her, hey, what your schedule is like, they're always I don't know, maybe next week. And then I'd be like, how about Wednesday at 6? Does that work for you? And they're like, oh, maybe not at 6, but at 7 it would work. That's the difference. It just prompts them to narrow down their search, narrow down their options, and then it's easy for them to make a decision. It's the same way if you were to take a girl to an ice cream shop with 100 flavors. It's gonna take her weeks to find a flavor that she's finally decides on. Where if you get her hey, you got vanilla or chocolate, which one do you pick? She can make that decision in 1 second. And that's the same thing when you're scheduling dates. Limit their options. I always ask hey, what are you up to tomorrow? Are you free to grab a drink? Or are you free to grab a drink tomorrow at 6 o'clock? See what they say. It actually prompts them to say, oh, I can't make that day. And if they don't say anything, you don't reply, you just say okay, and you wait. And sure enough, if the girl is actually interested in meeting, she'd be like, oh, Monday didn't work, but I can do Wednesday at 7 o'clock. It prompts them to actually take part in scheduling something for you. Because they know if you don't actually reply back, you may not actually text them back again. You proposed a date and she said I couldn't make it. It's up to her to figure out a time that does work. So that's what I always do. I schedule a time hey, are you free this day at this time to grab, frozen yogurt, whatever you have planned on doing, grab a drink. And it's up to them to say yeah, I can make it, or no, this doesn't work, but I've got another day that'll work. Does that work for you? At that point, you've got the ball rolling, and it works because she's actually taking part in, being part of the whole seduction process, as opposed to being what's your schedule like? And her being I don't know, there's a lot of potential times that could maybe work. And you just fucking narrow it down to 1 or 2 days, it's very easy for them to make a decision. And it's even if they can't make it on that day, they'll propose another alternative. Like, hey, this doesn't work, but this day will work at this time. And it's so much easier that way. It's the same reason why when you go to a doctor's office, they don't ask you, when are you free to come in? No, they say, are you free next week at 6 o'clock on like Monday? They don't ask you, oh, like whenever you're free, like that's when we'll schedule it. Same thing with a mechanic and all that stuff. They just go through the list and pick a time that works for you. It's that simple. And if not, the other person will propose an alternative. Does that work? No. Does this work? It's so much easier that way. This is also why I prefer, like if their schedules are very complicated and your schedule is very complicated, I just call them on the phone. I'd be like, it's constant back and forth trying to figure out a time and place. I just go, hey, I'm going to call you right now. I call her and like we can figure it out in like 2 seconds as opposed to bouncing text messages back a million times, wasting both of each other's time and getting frustrated. So much easier to call. But again, if you're doing text, it works fine in most cases. But yeah, it's just proposing a time as opposed to asking for a girl's schedule. And again, don't ask her when you're free to have the date that we agreed on. Are you free to meet up on Wednesday at 6 o'clock for that drink? Are you free to meet up on Wednesday, 6 o'clock for frozen yogurt? Whatever it is. It's so much easier. It narrows down their options. It makes them easy to decide. It makes girls like easy to decide on which day works for them. I can't tell you how many girls have said like, when I ask their schedule, they're like, like, I don't know, like, and then I call them and I'm like, what are you doing tomorrow? And they're like nothing. Are you free to grab a drink then? Yes. Boom. All it took was to me to take initiative and kind of lead the process. As opposed to leaving it in a woman's hands where they're like, oh, like my schedule, like women are in most cases terrible at planning. It's why they're always late. It's why they always flake because they're terrible at planning things. So help plan it. And that's why like I definitely encourage you to limit their options and take an active role in leading the process as opposed to leaving it up to her to decide. Again, if a woman has a very strict schedule and she's really punctual, this will be no problem. You could ask her like, hey, what's your schedule like? And she'll be like, yep, I'm free like Thursday and Wednesday after 9 or after 6, after 8. But that's not most women. Most women are going to be like, I don't know, like I could potentially do like maybe next week. I don't know. I'm pretty busy. And then when you just call them and be like, hey, like, what are you up to tomorrow at 6 o'clock? Oh, nothing really. So you're free to grab a drink to like at 6 tomorrow? Yeah, I guess that sounds like a plan. Boom. It's done. Again, it just cuts through all the bullshit. All right, guys, that's the video. Thanks for watching.